Hey guys, Yonas here. Don't forget to click down below to like and subscribe for more card game content. Thank you guys for your continued support, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's video.
Okay, let's jump right into the top four. Shanks versus Dofi is going to be a fun match. I think a lot of people have a bunch of different views on how this matchup should play out from both players' sides, um, in terms of how well Shanks can deal with the early aggression of Dofi and whether they can set up a lot of their early characters before Dofi's onslaught of sevens kind of runs them over. Because of that, I think both players prefer to go first, just to kind of either stop Dofi's leader ability or to, in Shanks's case, kind of curve out a little bit easier with its five cost characters. Um, this should be a relatively Dofi favored matchup, at least in my opinion. I know a lot of people have conflicting views on how well this matchup favors either player, but I think it depends a lot on Dofi's early aggressive pieces and how much they can find off of the top of the deck. Um, I think that this matchup generally can be very close, especially once the game goes on pretty late, when the 10 cost Shankses can just like kind of run away with the game. So because of that, I do think that a lot of what Dofi needs to find is this early aggression, trying to find Jinbeis, trying to find 6K bodies to try to apply as much pressure as possible. From the Shanks player, going first, having a Marco on your five down turn as like a relatively obnoxious body, it's pretty hard to deal with, but more importantly, a way to get rid of a two cost teach, which is like one of Dofi's best aggressive pieces, is basically ideal. This hand doesn't have any of the 8 cost Rayleigh, which is probably one of your best cards in the matchup, but you have plenty of time and you have a lot of decent early aggressive stuff. Whereas the this is a very powerful draw from the Dofi side. Having a Sengoku is like really, really busted going second. Trying to find anything really big to go alongside this Jinbei is going to be basically the dream. And if we can find those pieces, I think we'll be pretty happy. A Weevil would basically be perfect to kind of offset the extra costs you have to use the Teach. Um, but going second, I don't think this is a bad hand. The Teach is going to make a lot of the early starts really, really good. And let's get started. Sengokuing on the first turn, basically looking for Weevils and Boas more than anything. Ooh, we almost whiffed off this one and found a Law. Um, and we'll be taking that pretty happily. You could play the Buggy here to potentially try to find uh, a Weevil in the top three cards of your deck, but I think it's a little bit too aggressive to try to do so. You could just put in Jinbei plus Law next turn, and I don't think there's that big of a deal with doing so. In terms of taking hits, I think you can take the first hit pretty happily in this matchup, and I don't think there's much of a cost in doing so. Oops. Ooh, and we got a Jim or a Weevil off the top. Yeah, definitely got Teach, turn plus Jimbei plus Weevil to try to get that really explosive start going. Um, there are worlds where you might want to try to Perona early to try to minimize your exposure to a card like Marco, but since we have Teach and only Teach to set things up, this Jimbei Weevil is like the best thing we could be doing these first couple turns. And kind of the perfect swing eight instead of swing seven, just to kind of minimize your chances of your opponent block or using leader ability plus 2k. So I think it's a pretty good spot. Okay. This turn going five and then swinging Marco. I think it's really easy to just counter with one of your 2Ks here. I think your Jinbei might be really important for later. So I'd probably just try to save that as much as you possibly can. Okay. Going into this turn, we have Jinbei plus Law. My inclination this turn is just try to put as many characters in play and swing as many sevens. Um, just because this is one of the few turns where you can get three sevens in, one down on Weevil, two down on Jinbei, and then Teach plus putting in Law to just get an extra another seven at life. Um, I think that's a really great way to put your Teach opponent down to like two life very early in the game. So that's what I would do. Six at life is fine. It's really easy to counter out of these swings, especially once you aren't taxing the 2Ks, which are kind of the most precious commodities in this matchup. Um, Looks like there's going to be another 7 at life, or maybe, not entirely sure. We're getting started with the 7 at life. I think there's pros and cons of just doing one or the other, but the main problem is I think you just need to get these sevens in soon before the Rayleighs and the Ben Beckmans and the other really obnoxious threats start cleaning things up. Ooh, okay, yeah, 7 with Jinbei. And I think you pretty comfortably just use leader ability in 2K here. Just defend the life as much as you possibly can. Make your hand not too large in case of a pudding coming around. So I think that's basically ideal. Yeah, and then teach and did he put Jinbei on top? I don't think the Jinbei is necessary. You just have too many characters in play. Um, okay, Jinbei. Are you gonna play Law over the Sengoku? Or you're playing it over the Jinbei? Um, this play doesn't make too much sense. You effectively played over one of your Jinbei bodies with a Jinbei, so you kind of discarded a 1k counter for nothing for a large majority of instances here. So I don't really understand why we play the Jinbei. We could just held on to the Jinbei in our hand. Or if we wanted to do that, we could have just bounced the or played over the Sengoku and just bounced the Teach to our hand. Just like trying to make our board a little bit wider for future turns. This turn kind of makes things really easy in terms of cleanup. You could swing a bunch of like fives and sevens at board. You can just do a bunch of other things from there. But I think that last turn kind of definitely shifted the tides in favor of Shanks, running the Dofi player a lot more out of cards and also um, not putting him at a super low life total. Being at 3 in this spot is not amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but it is comfortable compared to like the average Dofi start. Okay. Well, the second teach getting rid of that, or second marker getting rid of that teach is definitely going to stop a lot of Dofi's progress. But I do think you kind of have to commit um, to playing this game slow now that we've been doing a lot of relatively small swings. Um, so I think this Gravity Blade probably won't get any better than it is now, and I think our board is going to be kind of obliterated if we don't end up using this Gravity Blade immediately. So I think you kind of understandably have to use the Gravity Blade here. So um, since the Shanks play ran out of 2Ks, they had to use leader ability +1 there. So now these 5K swings actually get to do something, but at the same time the Shanks player actually gets to use their 1Ks for once. So both players are kind of relatively content with how this interaction went out. And yeah, 5 and 6. I personally probably would just guard point out of this, or sorry, radical beam in this case. Doesn't feel spectacular to waste a radical beam on a 6K swing, but at the same time, trying to be at 3 life this next turn is going to be like the easiest way to get super far ahead. Um, Going into this, ooh, okay, we drew Roger, a lot of non-counter, and hopefully we have the time to play all of it. But at the very least, this dragon should be able to clean up a lot of this board, especially against an opponent with only 3 cards in hand. So dragon on 9 Dawn, swinging 7 at the law, and since the 9K swing is going to get at the Dofi, you can just defend this swing and then try to have one last hurrah to put your opponent down to 1 or 0. Um, I think there would. I think the turn before was probably a turn to try to maximize the amount of board you had to try to do another hurrah when you on your last turn, but it's fine to kind of do things from here. On your 10 on turn here, a lot of what I would want to do is probably just swing 7 with law and then kind of see where things go. See if it makes sense to attack with the Sengoku as well to try to get a bunch of pressure out of the way. Um, the Perona is fine. And there is a law that, or a Jinbei on the top that you can actually use pretty well here, especially with that Weevil to try to apply a bunch of pressure, which should be nice. Um, and what else is there? There's Jinbei like law and Crocodile. Crocodile's probably the least useful, unless you want to play the Weevil from your hand, draw the 2K, and then use something else. Um, but ultimately, I'd be much happier if there was just the swing 7, put in Jinbei, and then put the Weevil in from our hand. Um, Looks like there's Jinbei, there's Law. This is a very tough decision. I would probably just put Jinbei on top, and then afterwards put the either a 2K or a Law, depending on what I really want to prioritize to defend with. Um, and then afterwards, just try to swing with my characters as much as I possibly can, and not really spend my Dawn to do anything aside from leader ability. The longer this game goes, the harder it's going to be to try to win. So, um, Jinbei, Croc. What are he's thinking about so much this turn? I think it's pretty comfortably like Jinbei in my head in terms of like what I want to put on top. But it seems like he has a different plan in terms of like trying to build more 5k bodies for a future attack. Hmm. I mean, sometimes when you're playing Dofi, there's a bunch of decisions that you have to make, and none of them are relatively easy. And that's the kind of hard part about this deck, the decision paralysis every single turn, since there's so many different options with so many different cards. Looks like he chose to play the Weevil with his Fordon, drawing a Jinbei, and then using leader ability to put in or the Law and do 7/7. I think 7/7's fine here, or 6/8 in this case. Um, I think the 7/7 probably makes more sense since we've spent so much time kind of taxing a lot of the 2Ks in the early part of the game, and even like taxing the 1Ks earlier. I don't think that giving your opponent an opportunity to use a 1K for free is a great idea. Bouncing the Law also doesn't make too much sense there. I think you can just bounce Verona and be pretty content. Having an extra 5K body might be the game changer between whether you have enough attackers to go for game or not. And a Moria. Okay, it looks like the Dofi player is trying to take this game a lot slower than I would have liked. Trying to like force their opponent to keep attacking board, try to slowly grind this game out. But I probably would have just tried to get this game over with a lot sooner. Looks like the second dragon's going to make this game end a lot faster than anyone else would have liked, to be completely honest. 7 plus 9 plus 9 to get the W player all the way from 4 down to 2 on this one particular turn is not going to be easy. We did untap with the Weevil, but the Weevil's not going to be enough. Um, Honestly, from here, my number one priority is just try to get the Shanks player to 0 in any way, shape, or form. One, so that your perfumes actually end up going for lethal. Um, but more importantly, I just think that the longer this game goes, the harder it's going to be. And I mean, Shanks can sometimes counter out of a like 15 swing with a perfume or something like that, but it's not very likely. And a lot of times you have to spend a lot of the counter just making sure they just don't die the turn before. So I would probably do something like swing 10 with Weevil or something egregiously large, kind of forcing him to counter out of a swing. Um, or just do a 9 if you want to kind of give yourself the most amount of options, and then maybe like Sengoku to try to find a Boa. Um, Once you have an extra blocker and get a little bit extra counter here, you should be basically set to survive no matter what. But I do think number one priority is get your opponent to 0 here in any way, shape, or form. Um, so whether that's 9/9 or doing something else, I think it's probably the best. Looks like it's only a 6 here. Again, not the best feeling in the world. You gave your opponent a little too much time. And it looks like he's just doing a Moria. Moria bring back Teach. Looks like the Teach is presumably doing some Law shenanigans, just doing a 7 or 8 at life, and then bounce the Sengoku back to your hand. Um, Looks like the Law was put on top as well. Looks like it's an 8. Yeah, Law bounce the Sengoku. I think this is fine, but you had enough counter initially. I think you should just guarantee that going to 0 because 1 versus 0 against Shanks is basically night and day, given how easy it is for that deck to counter out of one of your multiple swings between leader ability or using their leader ability plus a couple 2Ks. Um, okay, looks like the Dofi player has guaranteed survival this turn. It's pretty easy to survive with 2 2Ks or 2 2Ks and 3 1Ks against 2 dragons with 2 life. Um, no matter how you dice it, even with another rusher, you should be safe. Um, but this game is going to be kind of scary, um, or it's going to be kind of hard to survive if there ends up being something like Silver's Rayleigh. Um, and really, he's kind of just doing plenty of work this turn. You get to do a 5 at the now 3K Weevil, which is basically impossible to save. Um, and there's going to be a 9 at the Law, and whether you defend this or not is going to be kind of immaterial. It's going to die to the second dragon swing, so it kind of should be fine from here. He chose to defend, and the Jinx player is just going to swing. And Yeah. I mean, I I think this game is very over if you don't go for game, so I would probably just do the put a bunch of Dawn on the teach and just try to go for it. However, perfume actually makes your math slightly better when going for game, since you get to use two Dawn to play the perfume and you get plus 2k plus teach ability. That actually would have been a little bit better to go for game with, and I think he could have been able to go for like 8 plus 10 between those two attacks, and that might have been sufficient to just go for game with. Instead, he's kind of taking a more defensive route with just playing a boa, but I think you might just be losing regardless if you play a boa here. Just on board, if there ends up being just a 9 with each of the characters, you don't have enough counter. And there's plenty of extra Dawn to make those swings even larger after you've taken those 2 life. So honestly, I think that playing the Boa was mostly a losing play. And now we're just putting our opponent to 0. And this was a bit dangerous now because, yeah, Roger. Roger's secret text of whenever your opponent has 0 or less life to go for game, or they can never block. Is going to be closing this game out. Okay. I think that game kind of exemplified why I think that the Dofi player really needs to take an aggressive slant and try to get as many characters in play as soon as they possibly can. And if they don't do so, a lot of Shanks' top end, like Dragon, like Silver Israeli, in this case 10 cost Roger, can just eventually just snowball the game out of nowhere. It was a good game to watch. I really enjoyed it. Great play from both players, and congrats on making top 4 in a CS. Looking forward to the finals, where we'll be seeing soon. It's going to be Shanks versus Dofi again. But don't forget to like and subscribe for the next yapping session with me, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. Peace, guys.